You're listening to What It's Like with Luz, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Lucy Nars, and on this week's episode, I'm joined by founder and former CEO of Bamboo. Recently renamed Upmarket, the app is designed to eliminate the dreaded queue and allows customers to order ahead and pick up from local restaurants and cafes. What started as a WhatsApp message to his local barista grew into a gap in the market for a service busy 9-to-5ers didn't even know they were crying out for. Sharing his experience with entrepreneurship, here's what it's like to be Luke Mackey. Before we get stuck into the episode, I just wanted to say that if there's a drop in sound quality throughout, I'm very sorry, but in respect of social distancing during COVID-19, I've had to record episodes remotely. In this challenging time, we're all trying our best, so I really hope everyone is staying safe and that you enjoy the episode. So, welcome Luke. Thanks so much for coming on and talking to me today. I think to start everything off, we'll go way back to the beginning and just kind of talk a little bit about how you were when you were younger. Were you always really ambitious, and did you always envision yourself starting a company, or did that come later?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. That's an interesting question because you always speak to entrepreneurs and they have very different upbringings, or they kind of find their ambition a little bit later in life, or they kind of find themselves in an area that they're really passionate about. I think there was definitely elements of things I was doing when I was younger that, looking back at now, that kind of tells a story. Whether it was when I was like between the ages of 9 to like 15, and I selling Christmas trees every Christmas, and then hiring my friends to sell them with me. Whether it was buying and reselling parts when I was mountain biking throughout secondary school, whether I was working in kind of my school canteen and selling sweets every lunch break for about 3 or 4 years. That kind of stuff. Yeah, that's the stuff that I kind of, without even me really realizing there was a kind of an entrepreneur in me. But I always had this kind of vision for myself that wasn't starting businesses. I actually wanted to be a pilot. That was just like my kind of a dream job, was to be an airline pilot. I actually went to join the Air Corps when I was like 18. That was my kind of goal. I was like, either leaving cert, doesn't really matter what I get. I was always kind of tunnel vision on becoming a pilot by the military route. And then I kind of fell into it just by I didn't end up getting into the Air Corps, just didn't make it through like some of the final exams. It's very tough to get in, and went into marketing. And for marketing, that's kind of where I found an area of academia that I really, really enjoyed, and I was passionate about it. It was very easy for me to consume, and started looking at avenues that way.
And what was it about marketing that made you go that way, considering, I'm guessing when you were in 6th year, you were very much just focused on getting into the was it the Air Corps that you said?
Yeah. So I think it was because when I was in secondary school, like I just obviously this kind of this idea of school and of academia that I suppose was learning things that I didn't really have too much interest in. And I took subjects in school that I probably shouldn't have taken as well. I was always kind of interested in consumer behavior, how people react to things, why people buy things. And that's actually why I chose marketing in the end, opposed to kind of general business degree. And then when I was in there, just a lot of it just made sense. A lot of it was things I was so interested in, whether it was even after after classes, I'd be following different aspects of it, or listening to podcasts, or following certain people that were doing interesting things in the space and trying to learn more. And I knew some people that were kind of starting businesses, or were starting cafes or restaurants, or working in them, and or people that were kind of, there's tons of people as interns to be to run different aspects of certain businesses. And these are people that's like within about 6 weeks of a college course, like, yeah, I'm going to go be an intern in I don't know, like a restaurant, and run all their social media. And kind of looking into that about myself, and just seeing how there's a ton of these companies that don't really know how to run their social media, don't really know how to create content, how to have a strong website that has the right type of has the right copy to get people in, and their menus are all in like PDF. You need to actually download it to read it. That kind of stuff that just made it just didn't make sense, and it was creating friction for the consumer to actually figure out about the product. So I had a friend who was actually a graphic designer, and I kind of just out of myself and himself brainstorming a bit, we were like, maybe there's an opportunity for us to kind of go in and solve a lot of these kind of like low hanging fruit problems for the hospitality industry that we kept seeing. So we started a kind of bespoke marketing company just for the hospitality industry when I was in the second year of college, and grew that up from like pitching small cafes and restaurants and hotels to getting a fair few clients on board that we were able to make that our job while we were both in college, and focus purely just on that kind of niche space, which was hospitality. Learn a lot from these operators. A lot of them were kind of first time entrepreneurs themselves. So we found that kind of niche, and that's just where I learned a lot about that industry in itself, and learned a lot about these operators and how they ran their business.
Was that called Space Fox Studios? Is
It
that?
was, yeah.
And then, so talk to me a little bit about why you decided to kind of, I don't know if you parked that for a bit and started working on Bamboo, or did the two just kind of coincide together for a while?
I think, yeah. So I definitely don't think I would have come up with Bamboo if it wasn't for Spacefox. So while I was building that company with Thomas, my co-founder at the time, I started drinking coffee. But it was like my morning ritual then was just going to the same coffee shop, same time, getting on a train and going into town to college, and working out of the college library on Spacefox stuff. And it was kind of just becoming more and more organized, but also I suppose a little bit impatient, kind of a bit more driven. I entered the same coffee shop every morning, same time. I knew the barista behind the counter, and I kind of just realized after a while, okay, I have to queue up, I have to order, I've got to pay cash, got to stamp my card, I have to get back in another queue to wait for my coffee. I'd always kind of buffer out like, okay, I need 15. If I want to get a coffee this morning, I have to get like 15 minutes just to buffer that in if I'm going to make it into town for that lecture or whatever. And I just started WhatsApping the barista on the way up the road and saying, okay, can you throw me on a latte? Didn't think too much of it, didn't think it was anything special. Then after about a month, he was telling me like, hey, everyone's WhatsApping me now for coffees because I see you coming in and they're asking about how they're doing that. And I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting. So I started thinking about that more and more, and I was like, okay, that's probably solving a problem for him because it means he can take more busy people in at his busier times, and not lose out on the people who look at the queue and walk away. So I started thinking, okay, maybe this is an app. Maybe this isn't just a WhatsApp group or whatever. There's a product here, and you can kind of the way I was looking at it was you can always build a services company, you can always build a marketing company. I think, and it obviously depends on the economic climate, and kind of what trend is. Like we kind of follow the trend of like Instagram's coming into the market, and it was very visually driven. And that's where like food kind of was a massive part of that. But then a product is something especially is very driven by timing. So whether it is an app in particular, so sort of kind of I wasn't a designer. I was kind of marketing and sales is kind of where I had an interest and where I kind of leaned into. But I started kind of mocking up what I thought an app for this might look like. And so I figured out how to like what the tools were used to kind of design apps. I learned my way around it. And I started figuring out how to make it more interactive. So when I have this idea and I'm talking to people, I'm not just kind of sound like a bluffer, just being like, hey, I've got this idea. I was able to like take out my phone and show them, hey, play with this. This is what I'm thinking about as a product. What do you think? And that really helped. That made it a lot more effective. I was able to kind of understand what a pitch would be for this, refine it down, and know and kind of understand people's reactions. And I was able to talk to the clients we had as well. So I was able to talk to them like, hey, what do you think about this? Would you use this? And the reaction was really strong there too. So they were kind of ended up being our first clients for Bamboo. So I was kind of always trying to, I was always, I suppose, trying to convince myself that this wouldn't work and convince myself it would fail. I don't know why. I think that was a kind of a good way to validate it, was trying to constantly tell myself it wouldn't work and then find ways that I would kind of prove myself it would. So I started entering things like college pitching competitions, like student startup competitions and Dragon's Den things, and learning to kind of public speak and learning to pitch it. And that obviously helped me refine my pitch, helped me get better at that. And I started winning things. I started like coming second and coming first, and just getting like free checks to kind of go and pursue this idea. And it's like, okay, great, but like, where do I go from here? Because I wasn't technical. So I had to go and I had to go figure out how to build this thing. And I was thinking back in the now, just how mad. It's like, okay, all I need is the amount of money it will take for a developer to come in and build a product, and then I'm off to the races. That's never the case. But I looked at dev shops, I looked at product agencies, but then people I just met from kind of like young entrepreneurs or people who wanted to start businesses from the whatever the pitch competitions I was in, or networking throughout some of the entrepreneurial events, told me about a guy that was in DIT, and he was building a product for couriers. He was building a product for local commerce too, which was in the space of say likes of Just Eat or Deliveroo or Uber Eats, that would tell their riders or their couriers where to be at the right time to make the most money, just based on like historical supply and demand. And I was like, that's really interesting. So I cold emailed him. I found his website. I cold emailed him, and I met him for a coffee. And I sat down with him. I took out my phone. I was like, here's the mock-up. Here's the app that I want to build. I spoke for like 10, 15 minutes before I let him speak. And I think the first thing he said to me, this is Alan, my co-founder, ended up being my co-founder, he said to me was, how is no one doing this already? And that was kind of that moment, like, everyone always talks about it, the simplest products are the ones that work out the best. So we both went off and we both decided, okay, could be something we could go work on, but we've got to go and research it to know that we can stand behind it more. So we spent probably the last 6 months of college just researching it and looking at how, like, looking at the market, looking at the opportunity, looking at the competitors, how much money it would cost, do we need to raise investment? And we didn't find anyone in Europe doing it, but we found Starbucks in the States that just started doing it with their app. So they had a kind of a loyalty app, and they tacked on ordering. And I think at that point it was only in the market about 6 months to a year, and it already got about 2% of their users ordering ahead. Which, when you think of Starbucks like transacting billions of dollars, was quite interesting. So we were like, okay, maybe there is something here. And at the same time, there was Halo and Deliveroo were coming into Dublin. This was around 2016, 2015, and they were getting a ton of traction. And that was partly because apps were getting better in how they were built, and mobile was getting more accessible on the go. So you had plans like Three had their unlimited data plan, like Vodafone were extending their data. So people weren't too worried about taking out their phone and going on Instagram when they're not connected to Wi-Fi. And that was how this product would have worked as well. We saw it as a product that you had to have obviously internet connection the whole time. And that was just kind of how mobile was going at that point. So we're like, all right, timing's pretty good for this. When we finish college, let's just go and rent a couple of desks in a co-working space, and let's just go after this product and build like a prototype. And from there, we kind of our goal was, how do we prove ourselves that this is a business, or how we prove to ourselves that this is a product that people want to use? So we wanted to build like a minimum viable product. And from there, we knew if we didn't raise money, we couldn't really do much. We couldn't really tackle it the way we wanted it to, because the business is kind of what we're giving to the user and what we're giving to the merchant. It's very much built on, I suppose, the value we add, and the value we add is orders. And the only way to really monetize that, we thought, was via commission. So we did need, we knew the business model was going to take some investment to get it off the ground. So we bootstrapped, we built an MVP, we built a very, very basic product that didn't even have payments involved in it. We went to all the businesses in that co-working space we were in, and we just kind of like said, hey, can you, like, knocked on the door, like, hey, can you download this like dodgy link, and can you use this app whenever you're ordering coffee down in the cafe in the building? And we got them all to do it. We basically said, okay, listen, we'll do a deal with these guys. We'll just cover like the first like 50 coffees at a discounted price or whatever. And started getting feedback. Started sitting down with all the people that were using it, trying to understand how they felt, how they would use it again. And a lot of them were. Now at that point, we're like, okay, we need to go and build this out. We need to add things like payments. We need to build it on iOS, because we only had it on Android. And we just need to go to the next stage of the business. And we were running out of savings at the time. Everything we were doing was just on our own savings, student savings, which worked very much. And we attempted to try to raise some money from Enterprise Ireland. We didn't get it the first time. Luckily, there was another opening that next month. We took all the feedback on board and we went again, and we got it. So I don't think if we didn't get that second time, I'm not sure where we would have gone. But that allowed us to kind of turn this into a company and hire people and go from there and launch like a product into the market. So we raised €50,000 at that point. We hired our first employee, an iOS engineer, And we probably turned around an iOS app in a month. And we just put like not a great product to market. Like when you look back at it now, it was ugly, and we just tried to get users feedback. So we'd actually go and we got about 10 to 15 cafes on board, and we very much thought this was an app for coffee shops. And we just sat in those cafes. Whenever orders went through, we would sit there and like be amazed, like, oh my god, that's a Bamboo customer walking in. And we would just try to grab them for a second, like, hey, you ordered on Bamboo. I know it's kind of a weirdo stopping you, but why did you download it? Who did you hear about it from? Why are you using it? What would you like to do better? That kind of stuff. So we just very early on was trying to figure out how we can make the product better for our users and go from there. And we really quickly realized like who our user was, and it was like the business professional, like working in a certain part of the city. They're stuck for time. They like to get out of the office, whether it's for lunch or coffee. And we added the value that they didn't have to go wait around, and it was very seamless. It was just a convenient product for them to use locally around where they worked. So that immediately changed how we would roll out. So our rollouts were very hyper local. We realized where we didn't work. We realized where we did work. We realized the types of restaurants we would work with. We realized ones we wouldn't work in. And we went from there. So we proved a lot in a really short period of time. We raised money. We raised around €500,000 in 2018, and we grew out the business up to hundreds of restaurant partners in 3 cities in Ireland. We had tens of thousands of monthly active users, like a really strong product market fit as well. Our users love the product, they come back again. We knew when we got a users to a certain point that they would stick around. So for a consumer product in Ireland, we did quite well. We're doing quite well. We have a ton of the user sentiment is really strong. People do love the product, and we got really good at measuring how people respond to it as well. So we were constantly, even up until now, we're still talking to our users and trying to understand how we can make the product better for them. Just very simple, and how we can kind of go deeper into the type of customer we're serving. So they are business customers, the types of they're business professionals. They use the app in a certain way, not the same way that like a delivery app is used. So we're trying to lean. You always try to lean into that aspect too.
How do you think that you attracted people to use the app in the first place? Because I think, people maybe around our age, they always think like, oh, if I could come up with an app, I'll have made it or whatever. So there's a lot of people trying to release apps into the market. So what do you think it was about your app, or was there something that you guys did in particular that enabled you to grow your customer base?
Very early, or even just at the start, you're always trying to figure out like what is the key like customer acquisition channel. We tried lots of different things, whether it was search, whether it was Facebook advertising, whether it was like referrals or whatever. The best thing that worked for us, and it was actually the simplest thing, was making sure that the customers inside the restaurant saw the product. And we would do everything it would take to kind of ramp up those restaurants. And when you got a restaurant or a coffee shop to a certain point, say like whether it be 10, 15 orders a day or a certain amount of them at lunchtime, that's when they grew exponentially. So the best form of our marketing was actually customers walking in, grabbing their order and going. Because the people standing in the queue were like, how do they do that? And they see a Bamboo pickup point. And that's how they that's how they like, okay, I'll try that next time. I'll download that app. But that was a key thing. But the experience was really what was most important thing there. Because if people if you ordered, if you ordered and you arrived and your food wasn't even ready, like, you're probably not going to use that product again. So we really worked hard on nailing that consumer and nailing that consumer problem and that experience, and having that kind of really like customer delight moment. So like when you place an order, you get told when your order's being prepared, you get told when it's ready to collect, you can get told where in the store to order. So like your order's ready from Tolteca, and you walk in the door, you'll find your order on the left hand side beside the till. Like, we'll literally tell you where in the store to go. So there's no kind of thinking or kind of awkwardness. You just like, it's a really simple experience that makes you like not have any kind of friction in your your kind of thoughts to reorder again. And when people do that, or obviously when you've got that really great experience, you find it becomes a lot cheaper to acquire customers, and you don't have to incentivize them as much. The customer value add is so strong that people will come back again.
And then just going back to you as an individual, when it came to that time of, because obviously, when you were leaving college, you couldn't have foreseen the success you were going to have with this app. So what was it like for you taking that leap of faith rather than, going down the path that probably a lot of your fellow classmates were going down of maybe like a graduate program, but instead you chose to take the risk and go with your own business. What was that like for you?
I think I very quickly realized when I was in Space Fox and I started to kind of understand there was a bit of success there, that this was a route that I could possibly take, whether it was with bamboo or not. Bamboo in particular was just one that I was trying to convince myself it wouldn't work. I think I just didn't. I probably maybe didn't have the confidence to go and like a product is a very personal thing. When you're building a product, it is quite personal. You're putting yourself out there. It's your idea. It's what you visualize in your head and put on paper, and people are now going to take it and use it. And that was, I suppose, a barrier I had to break down, that I'd never obviously done that before, and I feel arrogant in the thought that I can do it. So I was constantly trying to convince myself that I had the ability to do that. So I obviously ended up doing it. And the thing I did to validate it through while I was in college kind of gave me the confidence to go and run with it. And thankfully I did, and that's obviously something as well. People do have those issues. They were constantly trying to convince themselves they couldn't possibly do that, or I couldn't do that, or I couldn't build a company. Like really, anyone can do this if you just go and you have the passion to do it, and you trying to hone your craft, and you spend your time and you enjoy like learning about it, enjoying what you're doing, and trying to experimenting with like the solution you're trying to solve, and talk to people, get their feedback. Ideas shouldn't be like held in a vacuum. They should be out in the open, and you should learn about them. You should like ask people like, how would you feel if you could do this? Would this be good? Would this solve your problem? And then trying to like put it on paper and then get their feedback from them. And that's what's gonna build your confidence to go and run with it at a larger scale, and actually go put everything you have into it. And when you are building a company, you have to put absolutely everything you have into it, and leave nothing on the table.
Do you remember what the biggest obstacle or challenge was for you during the process of building bamboo?
There's like obstacles every single day. There's fires burning around you when you wake up in the morning and you look at your emails. There's not one thing like any CEO or founder will tell you that. There's multiple things, and it just like there's fires all the time. It's just which one has your most attention. So there's been plenty of times where like we've had difficult situations where maybe it's investment rounds fall through, maybe deals fall through, and that actually can affect whether you can pay wages every month. All the different things that are involved in running a company are on top of mind all the time, and it's whether you sometimes companies go through like high growth stages where the biggest problem is how the hell are we going to sustain this growth without blowing everything up. And there's points where like nothing is going right at all, whether you feel like you're just dying the entire time. So and that happens all the time. So like you usually go through one of those points in building startup at some stage. Hopefully it's the first one. But yeah, there's no kind of one problem, and there's always something that has your attention, and that is a worry, and it's kind of eating you alive all the time.
Did you ever want to give up?
No, there was never a point I wanted to give up. Like that's the thing I would always say. Like you leave the office at like 1 a.m. and you're going home and you're thinking nothing's going right, but at the same time it's so interesting and it's so exciting. You're like I never want to do anything else again. And that's that one thing. I'll always be building something. I'll always be building companies or starting businesses and trying to or building products. That's kind of from my experience from the last 3 or 4 years is that it's definitely laid out what I want to do for the rest of my life.
And then also I think it's always interesting when another founder comes into the mix as well in the beginning. You know, when you originally came up with the idea, did you find it difficult to share that with someone else and kind of let them in on it and help you build it?
No, he got it. Like Alan got it straight away, and I think we were obviously very very lucky to have found someone that I got along with. But even now, like if I was going to go start a company, I would make sure I did it with a co-founder. Building companies is very very difficult, and you have to have a serious level of reassurance in yourself to think that you can go and do it without having someone else by your side. And there are absolutely people that can do that, but you do have to have either it's a very, very strong core team at the start, or like having a strong co-founder beside you that can like keep you in check and tell you like that don't make that move. That's not the right move, or this is how we should. I think we should go with it. And like not even that side, just not even like the labor side, but the mental side of building a company. Like
is not you can't be transparent with your employees about every little thing, whether it's not knowing how wages can be paid at the end of the month, um, or knowing about a deal that fell through that has a massive effect on the outcome of the company. But you and your co-founder do, and you're the ones that you have someone. If when you have someone else that you know is going to bed at night and they're not sleeping because they have the same problem as you, and they're thinking about how to find a solution, or how to communicate it, or how to get around it, then it does kind of it eases the pressure a bit. So I would always recommend when you're starting a company, find a co-founder, especially in the first time, because it is a really, really tough thing to do.
And then just going back to Bamboo, so you'd really established yourself quite well in the Irish market. Did you expand internationally, or how is that process of trying to bring something that it works, you've got all your people on board, and then how do you go about trying to sell that to other places?
Yeah, I think not maybe mistakes, but one of the things that we probably should have done earlier is try to get into new markets and out of Ireland as soon as possible, because the type of business we were building was quite capital intensive to ramp up markets, and Ireland isn't the best place to prove that, and to prove that, and actually just have that investment landscape where people are investing in a consumer product like ours. So when we went and spoke to VCs in London, for example, they were like, "This is fantastic. Your metrics are amazing. You're holding customers. You've done a lot with a little. Now go do it in London, and we'd love to talk to you then." It's like, all right. So we did absolutely try to launch a new market. It's just things didn't happen that didn't go our way, where there's investment rounds just couldn't pull off, or things in the market changed, or just some dynamics changed in the company. And it didn't. Sometimes we just didn't have the opportunity to do that. Doesn't not to say that it won't happen, but I suppose what we tried to do then is really hone ourselves in the Irish market and nail what we did there, and we've kind of gone on to do that.
I know you're leaving Bamboo. So what sparked that decision? And then also what's next for you?
Yeah, so at the end of last year, I suppose it kind of comes back to the last question. The opportunity to take it into new markets kind of dwindled for us, as we couldn't just I suppose things like investment rounds didn't go through, and we've kind of felt like me personally, I felt I've done everything I can to build it up to the place it is now, and I had an opportunity to step back and move on to a few things that I wanted to do after Bamboo. So end of last year, I had that opportunity, and the start of this year in January, I stepped back from Bamboo, and I'm now in the process of transitioning onto my next thing.
Is it hard for you to watch the company that you built kind of run without you?
It is and it is and it isn't. Like, you can be proud of like how far you've taken it and where it is now, but ultimately you've got when you know there's nothing more you can do, or you've taken or the kind of the runway's run out. You've got to accept that, and no matter what happens, like I'll always know that I went and I built that company up to a certain point, and I met some amazing people, and I worked with some people I can be really, really proud of that I've hired and that I'd love to go and work with again. And that is a certain level of reassurance, or kind of confidence that's the first step in my kind of journey as an entrepreneur. You never get it right in the first time. I got a lot of it right and I got a lot of it wrong, but you can take that as kind of a badge of honor and move on to the next thing. It's a product that's used by a lot of people, thousands of people in Dublin and all over Ireland. So it's still there, and it's still something I'm proud to walk around and see people use, and I'll use myself. But yeah, no, it's bittersweet. Like,
if you could go back to the very beginning, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, well, one thing, as I was saying, I would like to have, I think, get into a new market as soon as possible, because the opportunity then grows. We tried to hone ourselves, like definitely, like when it comes to product, yeah, definitely keep it with a small group of people and try and get the product right. But I think when we started to see elements of product market fit, instead of staying in Dublin or Ireland for so long, I think I would have, one thing I probably would have done is try to get into a new market as soon as possible, because the investment landscape is a little bit different. And that's just like not having the experience of capital financing or understanding how those markets work as much when I was 22, 23. So now looking back at that now, that's definitely things I would look at. So if I was starting a company again, for example, I probably would be starting it in the States or in San Francisco or in a market where I know where if it was a capital, if I had to raise money to go and build it, that capital is available.
And I'd be interested to know, in your opinion, is there a secret to success? And then if so, what is it?
I think everyone has their own idea of what success is. Like my idea of success when I started Bamboo was probably a little bit different to what it is now. Like I just to know that that company, we got to a certain stage and that it was a product that is used so heavily, and after 3.5 years or whatever, that's obviously something I can stand back from and be really, really proud of. And as I said, like when I was in secondary school, I want to be an Air Corps pilot. I want to be an airline pilot. Just life works out in a certain way, and you're like, okay, thankfully it did, because I fall into something that I absolutely love doing every day. So I think if you love what you're doing every day, and you kind of have to set like a bar of what you think you can achieve after every step, I think you can always kind of readjust all your levels of what success is. So like by the time I was like 24, I think I hit a level of success that I was happy with and I could be content with. By the time I'm 30, I maybe have an idea of what success looks like, and then see just what you want to, when you're on your deathbed, like what do you want to achieve, what do you want to be known of for. So I think life is interesting that way, where there's no point trying to compare yourself to people who've gone off and done incredible things. Like life works out different interesting ways for them too, and how they were able to succeed and so early on, but understand like that you still can live like an incredible life, and be really happy with what you're doing, and be doing something you love every day, and still live a good life doing that at a certain level too. So that's just kind of like Chauncey trying to find out what success looks like for you, and strive for that and put everything into it, and that's up to you.
Finally, if I put your 10-year-old self in front of you right now from the position that you're sitting in today, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give yourself?
My 10-year-old self, I think it is just kind of focus on something that you really love doing and chase it. So like that, I found like at one point in my life, I focused on something that I really love doing and I chased it. And when you love what you do, you tend to get enthralled in it a little bit more, and you tend to be a lot more excited about getting up every day and focusing on that. And when you do that, like that makes it a lot easier to chase and make some success of it. So like whether you're a solicitor, whether you want to be a football player, whether you want to be an entrepreneur, when it's something you get up every day and you absolutely love, like chase it. So like when you're 10 years old, know that you can still do that for the rest of your life.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today and for answering my questions.
No problem. Thanks so much, Lucy.
Thank you so much for listening, and as always, rate, share and leave a comment if you like what you hear. And don't forget to follow @WhatIt'sLikePod on Instagram and Facebook. For more information and to download the app, visit the link in the show notes or follow the brand on their social channels. I'll be back next week sharing more inspiring stories, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luce.